This is the second year now that we've run the Luck Index, and of course we've been doing the Luck Index in the absence of VAR. That all changes next season with the introduction of VAR to the Premier League, and it'll be interesting how that affects our results.
What I'm interested in, are we going to have a Luck Index next year, or will VAR kill it because referees will be perfect? Peter?
Well, the short answer is yes, we will have a Luck indicator next year.
It's just going to be deflected goals?
Well, not necessarily, no. Let's go back to VAR and the principles behind VAR. VAR is being brought in around the world to detect the clear and obvious errors that referees make, or in fact they've actually missed an incident. VAR is not being brought in to clear up all the ills of the game, certainly not being brought in to see if the referee is clearly correct, because we all have a debate about whether or not he was correct or not. It's being brought in to make sure he's clearly wrong. And if he's clearly wrong, that's when VAR plays a part. So going back to the Luck Index, there will be parts of the game next year that are still down to luck, and that won't be impacted by VAR.
You mentioned clear and obvious error by the referee. Now, there's two instances from two tournaments this summer, the Nations League and the Women's World Cup. The Nations League, there's a goal that I think Jesse Lingard scored against the Netherlands in Portugal, which was given offside, which was correctly given offside, but it was so marginal that it wasn't a clear and obvious error. It was basically a
but that's not the case for offsides.
So you talk
about
offside.
It's offside. That's not clear and obvious.
Well, if it was given in the first place, so we have to wait for every single goal to be reviewed because of offside. Because this might be a problem with the law because it seems to be so weighted towards the defender now.
But with the offsides, that's actually those decisions are. As long as it's a straightforward offside, not one of those weird situations where there was somebody moving from an onside position and playing them on an active and passive. But when you're actually when it's simply a straight offside position, those, the results of that, but the judgments come through pretty quick.
Yeah, but they've taken the human element out of it, whereby it's too exact? Sure, the game is all about taking opportunity. It's not being a toenail offside. Being given.
So you're making a good point there, and a point that I can't argue against, because you're either offside.
There's going to be a but. I can tell a but's coming here.
You're either offside or you're not offside, and that's where the law has been written and interpreted at the moment. You're either offside or you're onside, and VAR is part of that law and actually sits as a layer on top of the law. As VAR is introduced throughout the world and people look at those offside situations and, your argument when he was a toenail offside, does that really make him offside? The lawmakers may then go back and look at the law for offside itself and adjust that.
There'll always be a fraction, whatever the law is, even if it's daylight, that there will be a fraction, but it just seems at the moment that in the past, a linesman or a referee would be allowed to have an element of human error. But now
he was allowed to have it.
You also have to understand some of the.
It's not cricket, is it? Whereby everything has to be.
But unfortunately, that's the law in this case. The thing that is going to frustrate people, because I've worked it out. I've done 400 games with VAR over the last 3 or 4 years, and the linesman will not put his flag up if he thinks it's a close call. He'll keep it down. He'll keep it down. He'll keep it down until somebody has a shot. It goes out of play, or the danger is gone. Then he might put his flag up. So he's just holding on to that, and that will frustrate some people. But that's the law, and it does work.
One of the other things that I think has sometimes been conflated with VAR as well is handball decisions. Right. People are talking about whether the law has changed, whether the interpretation has changed, whether it's VAR which has prompted this. Can you just walk us through this, Peter, the silhouette and whatever? What's actually changed in the law, whether it has to do with VAR, how it has to do with VAR?
So if you just put part of VAR just for a moment, the law has been changed from the 1st of June in order to give some substance to what we mean by handball. Such a subjective decision making anyway, that everybody has their own view on it. So IFAB, the lawmakers, have said, look, we'll try and put something in place that makes it easy for people to understand. And therefore, you'll hear these terms of the natural silhouette. And basically what that means is, if your arms are down your side here, and the ball strikes your arm, that's not handball, because that's your natural silhouette. People cannot defend, with their arms behind the back all the time. They will defend like that. However, as your arms become more bigger, in terms of the way they come out, you're making the area for the ball to impact more bigger. then the decision making from the referee is that would be a handball because you're gaining an advantage from your arms being out there. A lot of people argue that you can't set yourself. I mean, you've argued with me many times this. You can't set yourself, but the benchmark has been laid. So that should not be handball next year. However, that will be handball. Now, when you impact VAR in there, unfortunately, VAR, when you look at a slow motion replay of any action, it always exaggerates it to some extent. Handball is one of those things where you see it clearly strike the person's arm or hand from a slow-mo, and you think that's a handball. But you need to look at it in real time to take in that context. And that's a skill set that the VAR operators are learning at the moment. And we're not there yet.
I think the problem that referees have is that people want an explanation why it should be handball and why it shouldn't be handball. Sometimes it's just your thought. Well, you know, I would give handball for that. You know, as I say, I do commentaries on some 400 games, and I will argue with the commentator, well, I would have given handball for that, and he'd say, well, I wouldn't have given it. I mean, you try and explain why and how. It's almost impossible.
The only concerns I have is that it's still a learning process, and obviously there will be teething issues during this learning process. Just how quickly it needs to be done, you know, you can't have in 3 years' time people still saying, oh, well, still getting to grips with the system and building the relationships and understanding everything.
I mean, in a fair point to the Premier League could have introduced VAR some 2 seasons ago, could have, but chose not to because they weren't ready for it in terms of the training, the education, the communications, and actually the technology itself. So in the background, they've been training and educating their officials to an extent where they feel now they're ready for it. But you know, we all know that you can do as much training as you like, and then when you're put into that firing line, it's slightly different. So I don't expect an easy route come August going through the season with VAR, but what I would expect are more and more clear and obvious decisions and missed decisions being corrected by the use of VAR, and a consistency nature as we get towards the end of the season. I don't think we'll have a lot of too much consistency in the first 2 months or so because people will be where they'll pitch it.
A final question is because I'm kind of, I mean, this might be more of a nerdy question, but I think it could play a part. So right now, well, what's happened is when they've introduced VARs, is the video assistant referees have actually been referees.
Yeah.
Some of them turned out to be very good as video assistant referees. I'm thinking in particular people like Macaulay or like Ivati from Italy.
Danny Macaulay, very good.
So what's happened is they started getting all those VAR gigs for the big games, and they kind of dropped down the ladder in terms of their refereeing thing. Now, we know referees some of them have egos like everybody else. Some of them are human. Whether it's Graham Poll in the past or perhaps Mike Dean today, you can have an issue where a referee might actually be a very good VAR, but might say, you know what, I'd rather be on the pitch running around than be stuck up in the box with the other weirdos looking at pictures. Do you see this being a problem that some referees might be actually more perhaps also personality-wise?
Yeah, I don't think it'd be a problem in terms of numbers, but certainly that situation will arise.
We might lose some very good referees who become VARs.
Not every referee makes a good VAR, of course, because there's a different set of skill sets. You know, you're sitting in front of a TV screen rather than being out there using your management skills, using your fitness levels to adjudicate a game.
So is there an age that you have
There's
to
no
set?
age.
There's no age limit.
There's no age.
So you could keep former referees.
Absolutely right. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, I could
That could prolong your career.
Yeah, I could. But going back,
not your career, because didn't you pass every age limit? And everything?
I did. Yeah. I was the VAR trek who went through the barrier. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
And is that because you're like a fitness freak who managed to stay very fit when you took 40
I'd like to think so.
It's all that work on his
30-acre
farm.
Yeah, move on. But you're right. There will be horses for courses. There will be some excellent VARs like Danny Macaulay, who's really good VAR. Will that disrupt his refereeing career? It may well do. Will that person have an influence on that? Yes, he may do, but I think in terms of the numbers, that won't be so many. And what you'll find are people who will have longevity in their career because they're very good VARs and understand the game and can assist the referee in controlling the game.
And one day we might even have separate careers.
And absolutely right.